if you do something that you enjoy, that you do consistently, and over time it starts to build where it's from a business perspective, it's making you money and it's making you more money, or just from a overall quality of life, like you're enjoying it and you're getting more pleasure at, like you're just whatever that thing is that makes you happy. If you just kind of keep doing it, you don't have to have the answers right away.
Ben Zettler, it is good to have you here on Ecommerce. What's new with you?
You know what? I had a baby recently. That's what's new with me. I'll go with that one.
Fantastic.
He's awesome. He's 3 months old, and he's going a little bit of a sleep regression right now, but we love him, so we'll keep him.
Okay.
But that's been the exciting thing. I know it's a business podcast, but thankfully I'm so glad for once I have something non-business to share the last 2 years with how crazy this world has been and how busy everybody in our world has been. Mm-hmm. It's very exciting. So,
well, I appreciate you sharing the news with us. And Ecommerce, we are a business podcast, but we're 86.3% business podcast. The other, well, my math is terrible, but the other 13 or so percent wax philosophical, debate God, talk about family, all that good stuff. So I like to think that people can unwind here if a situation calls for it. But that's fantastic. Congratulations. And I'm gonna make it worth bringing up. So I'm just going to ask about the time management side of this.
Sure.
I myself, I'm not expecting to be a father yet, but it's on the to-do list. And one of the things that always comes to mind is managing time, managing energy, and how much of a lifestyle shift I might have to undergo in order to be prepared to be a father in the long haul. So how's the adjustment process been for you? And do you see yourself maybe you're in a state right now because babies need the most amount of attention right away, and then as time goes on, you can kind of re-shift back into more of a prior state?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of in a way something that I've planned for a long time.
Okay, right on.
It was very much my intention and I'm sure we'll get into it, kind of my background and where I've been that's taken me to where I am right now. But it was very much my intention, even when I was working a full-time job in an office, to never work in a full-time job in an office ever again. Mm-hmm. And so even, pre-pandemic, before everybody was doing it, before it was the cool thing to do, I was working from home, and that's what I wanted. And so now it's, in a way, I think a little bit, it's both easier and harder. There's pros and cons. So certainly I'm around. So when it comes to having a child, then I'm here to help out during the day. That also means that I need to also compartmentalize my time so that I'm still working and doing what I need to do. But in a way, it feels like there's at least from my perspective in these first few months, there's a little less pressure to, feel like I've got to do X at X time, because, we're here and we're not really going very much anywhere with how the pandemic is raging again anyway. So mm-hmm. It's really just a matter of kind of figuring out between yourself and your partner. In my case, my wife has been great with everything so far. And so when there are the times where I've got a meeting, or I've got to, book a call, or I'm getting on a podcast like this, then we're able to kind of, share the responsibility, which has been great.
Before I jump into, asking about, what you do and what you're up to, I just wanted to respond to that with my
Sure.
own point of view on it, which is, being in media, my, concern is having a child that is going to make its needs known through audible indicators, which is probably going to make my job, a lot harder. So there's a part of me that I told my boss this a year ago. I said, you know what? I say by the time I'm 40, I'm 32 right now. I kind of want to get out of media and focus on a form of work that is easier to balance. So I don't want to transition into creative writing, which has always been, my number one passion. So with the 8 and so I guess at this point, 7.5 years I have left, that mm-hmm. I do have time to, set myself up and be ready for that. So I appreciate that, this was something that you were thinking about. And I think, parenthood is something that we have the luxury of really strategizing and trying to find what is the ideal time, what ideal state do I want to be in, what kind of life do I want to create for, somebody else. So that's awesome. Glad we have a little bit of chance to bring that up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Here we go. Question one, I write it down. It's like, what's new? We covered that. So question two. So what are you up to these days? You're running Ben Zettler Digital Media, and is that your exclusive focus, or are you directing your attention into other realms as well?
So yeah, that is we can call it the exclusive focus right now.
Sure.
Obviously, it ultimately means a lot of different things. So the backstory to my business, like I'll kind of get into that first because I think that speaks
Sure.
very much to what I do now and why I do it. So I started my own business on Shopify 9 years ago now. Now that we're in 2022, it'll be 9 years in June. It was a company called Brooktide Sunglasses. And why did I start that business? So I got out of college and there was a few years there where I haven't really said this publicly. And then like now I've sort of like started to say it, and I've been on other podcasts and like I tell the story. So I got a job out of college. I graduated and then I worked for the University of Maryland baseball team. I went to the University of Maryland for like a 1-season gig that year, which was excellent. I mean, I credit so much of what I do and what I know and what my routines are and kind of how that's affected my life, like to that experience working there as an undergrad and then even post grad. But that was just a 1-season gig, and then after that, I had a full-time job at a executive development position at a company, which we'll go nameless for right now. But I've put the name out there, I guess, before in like a blog post.
If it's on LinkedIn, we've seen it.
It's probably on LinkedIn somewhere. But I quit after 2 days, and because I was unhappy. I was absolutely miserable. I was, never in my life had I really like quit something like that, but I just was not in a good place. Like I just didn't feel like, okay, I've now gone to college. I've spent these 4 years. Like what, I have all these hopes and dreams about what I'm going to do. And at the time, like I wanted to work in sports. I wanted to be an agent. I wanted to do like this, and then all of a sudden I wasn't doing what I thought I was going to do and where my like path was going. And I was really not thrilled. So after a couple of weeks after quitting, I decided, you know what, I'm going to start my own business at the very least to, be something that can sustain me while I look for a full-time job. And that's really what it became. So, I thought about what I wanted to do. I settled on, I'll make these sunglasses. Like nobody's really doing at this price point, like that lower level price point. These types of sunglasses. I found suppliers in Taiwan and other folks in China handling other things. And, it all came together, I think relatively quickly over the course of 3 to 6 months. Everything was sort of settled and I got product like the next spring. But I started that business. It was store number 41,000 or so on Shopify. I remember they told me the number once and I had it written down. I don't know where it is. Obviously now there's, nearly 2 million merchants, or maybe they've surpassed 2 million at this point. And very quickly after starting that company, I started to help, friend of a friend that's, looking for help building their website. They're starting a business. Or eventually I started to gain real clients, like people that I just didn't know through a random referral, like, I sold services to. And then Shopify invited me to their partner program in 2014, and then to their experts program 3 years later. And then even fast forward to the spring of 2020, Shopify Plus finally brought a consulting arm into their partner program, where typically they've reserved that program over the years to app developers and to large scale agencies, where many businesses that are out there that are looking for something more than entry level guidance, but don't have $250,000 for a new website. That's where folks can turn to folks like myself, like in my situation, folks with small teams or solo operators who have that stamp of approval from Shopify that can work with them. But yeah, starting that business ultimately kind of set the table for everything and anything that I do today with Ben Zettler Digital. And I was fortunate enough actually to sell the sunglasses company in 2018. So it was acquired 4 years ago. It sold to a guy that actually became a client for a few other businesses that he's involved in. And also during that time, and this is one of the unique things about what I do, and I should pause and mention, like, to go back just to your first question, of what is Ben Zettler Digital, and what do I do? What do we do? So it is. I'm a consultant, and while my name is on the business, I do have a team that I have working with me and with my clients across three key areas of e-commerce. The three things that I've learned from my experience with Brooktide, and then I'll get into something else in a second that's also relevant to it. But the three things that I've found that it takes any e-commerce business that needs to be operating at a certain level with these areas to have success. So one, of course, is their website. So we'll help folks with these more simple projects, what we'll say, of setting up a Shopify website on a new theme, or something that is much more intensive, like custom development of a new theme or certain elements, or creating some sort of custom function, or conversion rate optimization, or SEO, or anything that is website specific. That's one key area. And this is not in any particular order. This is like a sort of, a tripod in the way, like each of these three things kind of hold up the whole system. But so the second is in customer acquisition via paid advertising. So I am a Facebook business preferred partner, which really just means that my clients spend enough money. So Facebook and Instagram advertising is very much a part of what I do, as well as Google advertising, Pinterest ads, TikTok, like really all things paid. And then the third key area is in customer retention and customer relationship management, which is where I bucket email and text marketing. I am a Klaviyo Platinum partner, so that's up there, I guess, in their partner platform. I've worked with over 100 clients on Klaviyo in the last 2 years. And I also bucket organic social content strategy there as well. Now that takes me back to the other point I wanted to bring up. One of the unique things about my experience in being a service provider to any e-commerce merchants, though I primarily do work with folks on Shopify, is that I have what I typically call brand side experience. So I started my own company on Shopify. I learned the ins and outs of the platform. I got to understand what it took ultimately to build a business, which was built pretty heavily on influencer marketing and or pretty exclusively rather. But the other side of my brand experience that I can bring to the table when I'm working with folks is having worked at a large scale e-commerce company for a long time. So in 2014, while having Brooktide, like what I mentioned before, of being a not a stopgap solution, but something to sustain me while I was looking for full-time work, I eventually found a job at a PR firm for about 5-6 months in New York City. And I left that in January 2014 to work at Steiner Sports. Steiner Sports was the largest autographed sports memorabilia company of its kind in the world for about 30 years. And they're actually bought out by Fanatics. People will probably know the Fanatics name more prominently. They were bought out 2.5 years ago, which is when I took the consulting work full time. But during my time there, I was the first employee at the company hired with a specific dedication to social and digital marketing. And so that's where I got a lot of the boots on the ground, tactical experience to understand what it took to garner engagement, create a community, the things, all the Web3 things that people are talking about now of community and, building, brand evangelists and all of that. Like that's all still there, like at any point for any business at any given point in time. But, we had 50,000 cumulative followers when I first started there. And within my first 2.5 years, we grew that to over 2.5 million cumulative followers across LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, properties for the main brand, properties for the CEO, Brandon Steiner, and also through like many of the various partnerships that we had, like with the New York Yankees and the Knicks and Rangers and our retail location. And yeah, 2.5 million, great, sexy number. That's why I say it. I say that on here, like I say it to clients when I talk about like my services and experience. But the biggest thing ultimately is that we turn social into a legitimate lead generation and sales tool for the business. We were doing like anywhere from 15 to 20% of total online revenue per year directly referred via social, but then it was also fueling other areas of the business Email marketing, for example, in the memorabilia world is, pretty massive because you think, okay, higher average order value. Typically, collectors tend to skew a little bit older. They are, more used to email as a selling channel, and so email made up about 50%, 50 of our online revenue, and we doubled our engaged user base over a roughly 2-3 year period via social, via giveaways and advertising and everything else. So my role there expanded pretty rapidly into overseeing not just social, but paid advertising and affiliate marketing and email marketing, and eventually our entire e-commerce operation. We actually were on a custom-built platform for the website and helped to lead a replatforming over to Shopify Plus. And yeah, then I'd been waiting to take my consulting work full time after I had built up a decent portfolio on the side. And Brandon Steiner said to me, we're getting bought out, so you can kind of stick around, get your severance, be on your way, and that's sort of how it shook out. So then yes, this was June of 2019 is when I took Ben Zettler Digital kind of all in, jumped into the pool, and decided to move forward with that. And it's funny, like I remember in those days having some conversations with folks that I know, like kind of in the Shopify world, some really good partners of mine that I've developed, nice relationships with over the years. And one of them offered me a job like that day, the day that he heard about me leaving. And there was maybe like 5 seconds where I was like, should I do it? And then I told him no, and he's like, all right, good, good decision. And he was right. I mean, it's been, the best decision ever. Like I said before, my goal was to be able to work from home, which I got. And that was, 6 months pre-pandemic. And, really have control over my day-to-day and be able to really just do whatever I want with this, which has been excellent. I've had a lot of fun so far.
Consulting is, it's one of those positions that I think a lot of people, dream about because it sounds like it's not exactly labor intensive. You're hopping on a call and you get to share advice and knowledge with others. But I think the challenge with consulting is making sure that you're at the top of your game and that you're paying very careful attention to what changes in the market so that your advice and your experience never goes out of date, not even by a couple of weeks. And I think one of the advantages to your, to your operation is with BZDM, which took me a second there to put together. BZDM is, by having a direct relationship with clients and working with them, continuing to study the market, understand what's going on, it makes for the consulting side, it retains your own confidence as well. So that, yes, you're continuing to speak from a place of authority and knowledge.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that. One of the things I've actually been thinking about recently is I may have a little bit of a branding problem. And why I say that is, yeah, I call myself a consultant, but between myself and my team, we're very much tacticians as well. Mm-hmm. So when we're working with clients, like we're building that website. We're not just telling you how to build that website, or we're running your Facebook ads. We're not just telling you how to run your Facebook ads, or the same thing across like any services. So, but yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Like when it comes to, helping folks and steering them in the right direction, based on not just the experience that you have, but also what's happening in the market. Yeah, you have to stay, to some degree, really on top of everything that's happening and what are the tools, what are the technologies out there. Sometimes it's funny, like I'll get a question from a client, like if I've recommended a certain app or something like that to help them with anything. It could be anything, like on their store or with their advertising. Why didn't you give us this before? I was like, well, they're new. They just started, and I started with one client and they're working great, so I made the recommendation to you. And so things are constantly always changing, and that's a good thing. But yeah, you absolutely have to stay on top of it for sure.
This was a question I didn't write it down on my notepad. Didn't write it down on my Word document. This is something that's been swimming around in my mind for some time now, and I'd love to get your expertise on it. So I'm happy. I'm of this philosophy that you can't grow at the same time that you change. So a simple analogy is if somebody decides they want apples and they plant an apple tree, the apple tree takes time to grow and it needs nurturing. Somebody changes their mind and says, you know what, I think I'd rather deal with oranges. Well, they can't convert the apple tree into it. And God forbid they have enough room on the acre that they don't have to knock the tree down and put another one up. So I think that there is a divide between growth and change. From your point of view, with your expertise, have you found that I'm wrong and that change is a means of growth, or have you found that change has largely been a lateral move and then growth has been the vertical move?
It's a great question. I've thought about this.
I'm struggling with this a lot.
I've thought about this in a little bit of a different way recently, because just thinking of my own sort of career path and where I was for a while, and then ultimately what I'm doing now and what has enabled me to do what I'm doing now. So that there was a real, I shouldn't say even like a short period of time. It was essentially like the entire time that I was working at Steiner Sports, like over those 5.5 years, to different degrees. Like it started small and then it grew and grew and grew. I was doing, other work, and I was consulting folks, consulting and doing that tactical work too. But I was building the business of what I do now over that period. And so when it came time for that specific change for when you jump into the pool, there was a tremendous sort of baseline or foundation already in place. So even just to take your example, like you have the apple tree. Well, if you have the real estate, if you have the room to plant the orange tree and let the orange tree grow while you're picking apples from the apple tree, then that would be that's the sort of the approach I took, I guess you could say, because I was able to just kind of hit the ground running when it was time to make that change. Now that's not going to be the case for everybody, because I'm crazy. Like for 5 years, I didn't sleep much. I sacrificed social relationships. There's negatives. There's real negatives. But with where I am now, and I'm doing exactly what I want to do, and I have a wonderful wife, and now I have a son, and while we're stuck in this apartment and we've been house hunting for a couple of years, and the pandemic has made the housing market crazy, that's really the least of our worries. We're very, very fortunate to be in the position that we're in. So not everybody can take the same approach or the same path. So in other situations, and this is really just my opinion because this hasn't been my experience, but if there comes a time where any person is out there has been thinking about like for my job or my hobbies or whatever it is, like I'm doing this and I don't really want to be doing this anymore and I want to be doing something else. Yeah, be prepared for there to be that period of time where, okay, you didn't have the space for the other tree to grow, but now that you've cleared the space that you have out, now you can use that as an opportunity to learn and grow and progress and go in a different direction. Mm-hmm. And I guess the answer to your question is it happens in different ways, I think, for different people, depending on their circumstances.
Well, I like your take on it because it encourages a more broad perspective on it. No, don't just focus on the one tree, focus on the space to create it. Because then I'm thinking my own metaphorical hypothetical simulation in my mind is, oh yeah, no, I'm planning a bunch of apple trees. But wait a minute, maybe I should plant some other ones. So, that change doesn't have to be something physical, like actually chop something down. It can be, actually, you know what? Cross that out. Let's plant this instead. So that's my takeaway from it for sure.
And the other thing too is a lot of times what I've found is that, it takes a certain type of person, from like their personality and what they're willing to do to like, if people ask me all the time, like, how do you do all this? I'm like, what do you mean? Like, this is just I'm just doing these things. Like I'm working with this client and I got this job and I have this thing. I'm like, okay, that's just what I do.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, maybe it takes a certain level of crazy in some ways, but I think people do tend to underestimate themselves and what they're actually capable of to do at once, like, holding a job and starting a side business, or, just, playing in a band on Saturday nights, or starting a podcast with their friends, or like all these things that, like, in theory, it takes a lot of work, and I'm doing this, I don't have time. Like, given the right circumstances, of course, like you can pretty much like always find the time if you're motivated enough to do it, and if you're not, that's okay. But I think people tend to underestimate themselves in terms of what they're ultimately capable of.
Whether it's music or business, or learning a skill or a language, by design, by cosmic design, the beginning is usually the hardest part, because that's when the muscle memory has to be established. That's when all the most amount of mistakes are going to be made, and just holding out until you get those flashes of brilliance, and then things start to make sense, and then the ball starts rolling, and then it's up to the person to decide how much they want to challenge themselves. And so yeah, and I maintain it's by design. It has to be hard as a starting point, because it filters out who's committed, who's a natural at it, and who is just adding fluff to what could already be a saturated situation.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah,
and also, don't be afraid to fail either. Like, you try something and it doesn't work, you move on to something else. That's okay.
Yeah. Some of the notes I took down from your backstory, there's one, I don't even know if I heard this right. I gotta just double check. So did you say that you were starting a business as something sustainable while you look for a full-time job?
Yeah.
Okay. See, that's why I wanted to confirm
that was the initial motivation. Yeah.
Right. Because that's the role reversal from what I think an atypical person would say, which is, I guess I'm going to start a full-time job or look for a full-time job until my business becomes sustainable. So I had to clarify, because it does seem to be the opposite. So, like, can you, what do you think it is about your decision-making process, or even your confidence that that compels you to go that particular strategy and say, I can do this. I can make this business work. And then what is it about the full-time work that is more of like the loftier side of it, where that's almost like the goal that you were trying to work towards?
Well, I'm thinking back to like my 22-year-old self, which
Right.
It's insane to think I just turned 31 last week. Like, I still feel in a way like my 22-year-old self. Like in my brain, like I don't feel very much different. It doesn't seem that long ago. But thinking back specifically to that time, I was in a very different place just in life, like we talked about before, just out of college. So just out of college, what does that mean? Well, don't have any money, and in a position where, like, okay, I can start this thing, and I don't really have a sense of what's the market, how far could this go? It's funny because Blender's Eyewear started like roughly around my, same time, maybe a little bit before. And I think they sold for like 30 million or 40 million or 60 million, like some crazy number of like earlier last year. So maybe that's that's the answer to that question. But I had really no idea. So I figured, like, okay, like I can just do something maybe in a way also to occupy my time, forgetting just like, sustain me like financially, but just, so I don't go crazy, like getting all these like rejections from, job applications. And so it just sort of built over time. In the same way that even my business now has built over time. Like I didn't start working with clients when I was working a full-time job with the vision at first, like, the long-term goal, the lofty, 10, 15, 20 years down the line. Yeah. I'll be working for myself. Sure. Actually my old partner manager at Shopify, her name is Lauren Hellstab. I always shout her out. Like every time I do one of these things. She had a conversation with me. This was probably like 7 years ago now. It was a while ago. She said, like, what would it take? How much would you need to be doing, to be able to take your work full time? And that was the first time anybody had ever asked that question. Like I'd never thought about it. Like specifically, like I'm making websites and I'm running email marketing and I'm doing these things and it's fun. But I had never thought, okay, this is going to be my next job. Like I would go have interviews for like other positions at other companies and never got any of those offers, even when I was working a full-time job. Like it just wasn't part of the equation. And I said to her, I was like, I don't know, like maybe 4 times what I'm doing right now. I had no idea. And within 2-3 years, like I said, the long-term 10, 15, 20-year vision, within 2-3 years, it already happened. And I wasn't doing, 4 times what I was doing at the time. I was doing more like 10 times what I thought it would require. Like it just, good things happen if you have some level of consistency, and you don't necessarily always need to know what the end goal is. Cause that just wasn't the case for me. Like, some people maybe would, subscribe to something different, but for me, that just wasn't really the case. So to go back to your question of like, when I started the sunglasses business, why did I think that, I had to find a full-time job? Like for me in my head, like at the time, that was the most logical step. Like I didn't think like, okay, I'm going to make millions selling these sunglasses. It was start small. It was like, all right, let me take my bar mitzvah money and, buy enough, to pay for the mold and for the shipping over from Taiwan and, building the site, which I took 3 months over the course of a summer to build the site on Shopify. And just like kind of get an understanding of like what was I doing? Like, oh, I took some HTML class in high school. Like, let me figure it out. Like, it took me 3 months to do what I could do now in a couple hours. So it's just, you're just kind of constantly in this process of like learning what you can do, and then finding the path that makes the most sense. Certainly like now I can think a little bit more long-term, a little bit more strategically about like the direction that my business is going and sort of the approach. But to some degree, that's what everybody's doing. Like you're making decisions based on the information that's in front of you at the time, and then you're running with it.
Well, I think you made, a number of points there. But the one that is critical to me that I want to reiterate for emphasis is, when you said that something that took you a few months now can take you a matter of hours. And this ties into what I was saying earlier about the hard part is the beginning. And then as your skills develop, efficiencies begin to set in. And the difference between somebody who can do it within, a much shorter period of time comes from that constant building and developing the skills. So, I don't care how many times I hear it, it needs to be said, and it bears repeating.
Yeah. And that's where I get into a lot of interesting pricing discussions with potential clients. So in some situations where they, I'll say, okay, like I can do this, this, and this. And yeah, it'll be done tomorrow. It'll be done next week. And you want to charge how much? And it's just, well, there is that element of like, you don't have to work with me. Number one, you have other options that are out there. But if you try to do this yourself, how long will it take you? And what's the value of that time? Mm-hmm. That's a lot of conversations that I'll inevitably have in certain situations, especially in situations where we're taking on like, a site build or something like that, because there is that experience that has gone into getting an understanding of how to do a certain thing. And then being able to deliver that thing to someone else for their business. And there's tremendous value in that.
And I think it's about reframing the client's mind from, oh, this is expensive because it takes time. In reality, it's the price that it is because it saves time.
Saves time. And what is the other, the value that it's bringing when you do XYZ with your website, when you do XYZ with your advertising? Like what's the return, the actual return? Like how much money are you going to make because of that? Mm-hmm. And look, it's interesting because, in the sort of the pool that I swim in terms of the types of clients that I work with, or like I mentioned before about the Plus Partner program and how we as consultants kind of sit in sort of a nice in-between space between like, a company that's ready to spend $250,000 on a new site versus, companies that need more than entry-level guidance. And that's kind of like right where I typically function best with a lot of folks. But there's still situations where I take on like work with somebody that's starting a business out of their parents' basement, like I did 9 years ago. There's still ways that I can work with them. Certainly where there are, financial limitations in their situation, like that can be more of a consultative approach to a project, or something that is, not me, taking on certain tactical work that maybe they wouldn't be able to afford at the time. But there's always like different ways to try to find a solution and to try to help somebody.
I'm gonna shift gears. Actually, before I do that, the one note that I wrote down that I wanted to share with you, because you said it took 2 days for you to quit one of your jobs. I worked at Popeyes for a day, and I quit the day after. A lot of it had to do with mental state. I wasn't feeling good about myself. I had braces. The girl I liked didn't like me back. My hair was long, and I would look at myself. I would take off in the mirror at the Popeyes washroom with the hairnet and just broke down crying. I was like, all right, I can't do this. I finished my shift. There was still chicken that needed to be made, but my dad felt so bad. He drives to the Popeyes and he quits on my behalf. So, it does make me wonder, like, if I had more, of a don't give a damn attitude, and just had like a generally more positive view of myself, if I would just be, oh yeah, whatever, it's just Popeyes, who cares? I eat the food. Why would I feel bad about
getting the food's
paid
great.
To make it? Yeah. But yeah, anyway, so on to the gear shift. So my crack research team, they're like, Joseph, just put the question however you would ask it. I'm like, no, people deserve their credit. So my research team, my producer, my SEO, they noticed a term that you would use, and you brought it up a little bit earlier, which was social selling. Now, we've been doing this podcast for quite a few episodes. There are like 150 episodes, and we have not talked about this. So, first of all, you're going to have to give us the 101 off the bat, like a social selling. Is this part of a longer process where something has to happen first before you get into it? Or is this something that people can do directly to cold traffic?
So you're talking about like organic social?
I'm gonna assume that it's organic. I don't know if there's a paid component of it, but our perspective of it would have been, the organic side.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like that's sort of in a way like the holy grail of what so many companies are looking for. Like they want to be able to amplify their reach and grow their following and get more sales and do all of these things. And hey, if we can just do all that organically and not have to pay anything for it, then great. Now, for any sort of matured e-commerce business, everybody has a paid strategy. You're putting out a certain level of spend at whatever level that is ultimately across social channels, across Google, and that can and should be a very big element of any business. But of course, like if you can like I mentioned before, like build some level of a community or conversation around not just the products that you offer, but the ideas that your products speak to, then you can have and build and sustain that community, and you can use that as a way to drive actual traffic to your site and get people to actually convert. So that's the super general piece of it. So what's like the piece of that in practice? So thinking about let's talk about at Steiner, like when I was the day-to-day tactician on our Instagram page and on the Facebook page and on Twitter and on everything else. So we did a lot of different things ultimately to sell on social. And that was anything from live video shows that we would do with the CEO to showcase memorabilia and what's this product worth, and have take call-ins and like literally set up like a radio show. We made like a studio in the office. We took out an empty office. We did podcasts. We did video interviews with athletes. We did all of these things. In some cases, like direct selling, like, hey, we're on this live video. We're talking about this thing that's this price that is lower than it's ever been before, and there's X amount, and go buy it. And that stuff worked all the time, but only worked because we had gotten to a point where we built out a certain level of community of having those interviews and giving people access to athletes and, the things that they're sort of interested in that they could, have fun with at the end of the day. Or on our Instagram page, like doing a lot of like poll questions and engagement and, giving stuff away and doing things that would take what was nothing at the time to over, it was like, at our peak, like 160,000 followers or on that page specifically. So if you can do that, if you can, to some degree, like build community, meaning like post content that users are interested in and will engage with, whether that means, like so much of social media now is like, the stuff that goes viral is just like the funny memes or like the witty thing or something like that. And that's not necessarily what that means. Like that stuff works, sure. But even just, catering to people's interests. So in our cases, like sports fans' interests, what are they interested in? They're interested in like debate about sports and, what are opinions? They're interested in like, okay, if Shaq is in our office, we can show pictures of Shaq, like, signing 1,000 size 22 shoes. And like one of our guys there, his name was Matt, Shaq literally shoulder pressing him in the middle of an autograph signing, like just doing like cool things like that you literally would not get anywhere else. Mm-hmm. And those are the things for us that made it easier ultimately to garner engagement. And then the next time that we've got a new product that we want to sell or something that we're putting on a cool discount or running a sale, whatever it is, people would respond positively because they know that we've got a certain authority in the space, because they sort of know the intention of the content, so they are not turned off by constantly being bombarded with sales oriented messaging, and that's sort of how it worked and how it went. And then we just did that consistently for, in my case, the 5.5 years that I was there. It's kind of like the Gary Vee model of, like he taught, was it the $1.80 strategy or the 2 cent? Like I forget what he calls it, but
I hear the word 80 and I think the 20/80 rule.
Yeah. Like the idea that you can have like a singular piece of content that you can then stretch into other things. So like if we had an interview with with somebody, like if it was like Bob Knight, for example, like if Brandon did an interview with Bob Knight and then we could get, video Bob Knight, throwing a chair in our office, and, like we can take like the YouTube interview, you get the long form, you get something else that you're putting on Twitter, you have something else you're putting on Instagram. You do that long enough and hundreds enough times with enough players, like then, okay, the next year, like, hey, remember when we did this a year ago? Like it just creates this train that just keeps kind of rolling. And it worked out. It was great.
Was there a hierarchy to which social platforms were more important to your audience? I would imagine this might change from niche to niche. Like say putting all your resources into making YouTube content, long form video content, so then that can be edited and extracted, clipped, so that it can go on to the more bite-sized platforms. Or like, what was the way that you prioritize the platforms?
I think for everybody, it's to some degree different based on, mm-hmm. Who's your audience, like where are your people, and what is the what are the lowest barriers to entry at the time for growth. So in our case, it was kind of twofold. Like on the Instagram side of things, for like TikTok didn't exist yet, so on the Instagram side of things, Instagram was in the sort of growth phase that TikTok is now, or even the growth phase that TikTok was like 2 years ago, let's say, where they're adding hundreds of millions of users a month or tens of millions of users a month. So it's making like growth, I don't want to use the word easy, but if again you have that consistency, you can get, even through not doing like crazy like giveaways or buying fake followers, I think you can get 10,000 followers in a month, in a relatively straightforward way. So that was great, but Okay, now let's think about the business. Let's think about who's the typical customer of that business, average order value. What can somebody afford? Instagram, okay, teenagers, early 20s. Are people going to buy a $200, $300, $400, $500 signed baseball? Not in a lot of cases. Certainly over time that developed there, but for in that case specifically, um, Facebook was tremendous, even though Facebook wasn't adding the tens of millions of users a month and was viewed and still kind of is like as the platform that people don't use very much anymore, but yet people are still there. Um, and so, yeah, video content on Facebook. And when they released, live video capabilities, we jumped on that right away. The first live video we ever posted, it snowed and I was home working from home. And the only thing you could only do it from your phone at the time. So I took my phone and then I just put on our website. We put on like there's like a Mariano Rivera autograph photo up for sale. And I just put like a 5-second live video on my phone showing that, because live videos at the time went as a notification to everybody that followed the page. So we got an insane amount of visibility from like some super low quality content. But just knowing, what the capabilities were of the tools that you're working with.
And just for context, just two things I want to also know about. I was like, so there was no prior notification for the audience that you were going to go live. Like you just like went live and then based off
not
that
at the time. Yeah.
Wow.
It progressed very differently where it could be like you could hook into like, actual cameras, and that's what we ultimately did with our studio, and you can schedule live sessions and you can do all that. But this was like our page got the live capability and we could do it from a phone and say like, hey, we're live. And then, that's kind of how it went.
One of the things that you had mentioned earlier, which I think is going to be worth bringing up now, you mentioned that in Web3, the main crux of the conversation is building out the community. And to me, describing what you had what you done with Steiner Sports. Did I get that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. It's important to me to remember that kind of thing. Is building out the community, setting out the authority, and having so slight detour, because this is another one that I'm actually even more fascinated about, is I guess the relationship between building the authority and what that does to determine value. Now, this is like a question I'm kind of like building on the fly here, but how much influence did your company have in setting the price versus just responding to the market price? Like, did you actually have some ability to change course?
Kind of, yeah. And that's probably a little different than what most companies will typically experience.
Right.
Especially those like in my case, or for anybody that, folks that I work with now, or anybody that's listening, like you're not necessarily going to be the market leader. So you don't have ultimate control over price.
Yeah. And I do think it is worth pointing out too, that in the memorabilia space, a lot of the value is based off a person's own subjective relationship with it. If somebody has high sentimental value for a certain player, they're going to pay the money for it. So that is important.
Yeah, it's that. And it's also just with the company having been a leader in the market, and also like the different things that you could potentially do. So like if we are they were doing a limited edition product that was like a 1 of 1 or 10 of 10 or something like that, versus like having a player sign 3,000 of something. Like there is sort of like ultimately setting that market in a way. The market also kind of dictates itself. Like, what are people willing to pay? And then, what are we willing to charge? And kind of in a way works itself out that way. But definitely different than most things that, most folks listening are probably like, if they're selling clothing and, you're not going to, maybe there's $1,000 pair of jeans out there, but you're not necessarily going to, charge $1,000 for the pair of jeans that you're selling. Like it's just different.
Okay. I was fascinated about that one, but going back to the primary detour, which was, so again, mentioning, Web3 largely about community, it does make me wonder about what was the principal conversation around Web 1 and Web 2. Because I think one thing is true is even prior to Web 0, social selling, or what we've been talking about here, is key. Building community, building an authority, having a message, having a brand that means something and is on a mission. So what was going on, or like what were the primary leading factors in Web 1 and Web 2? I obviously from your point of view, from your experience.
You know what? I could by no means position myself as an expert in Web3 and NFTs and all and the things that, and if I go back 6 months from now and I listen to this interview, that I'll be like, man, like I should have known a little more than I did, or than I do now. It's just I'm not quite there yet. I don't quite understand the value of certain things yet. I think one of the things that like I'll dive specifically in the whole thing with like NFTs. Like, I think there is so much that's out there that like is going to lose value pretty quickly and is going to like fail and not work. But I think it's just in a different way, formalizing the things that everybody has known since, the beginning of time when it comes to marketing and trying to sell something and sell a product. And it's just sort of like a different mechanism for creating that community and that group of people that are your brand evangelists and are the people that are most interested in, the products or services that you sell, and how are you presenting the things that you sell and adding value to the relationship with customers or with clients or with whomever it might be. So to me, like, it's funny, like I'll scroll through my Twitter feed and I'm sort of like, I follow like a lot of people like in the e-commerce and marketing space. And like, like I said, the mechanisms are different, like NFTs and the blockchain and how people buy digital products. And like, that's very, very different than what stuff has been in the past. But to me, like the principles are still the same, in terms of like you're selling something, you're adding value in some way. And then based on the value that you're adding, like that will dictate somebody's willingness to buy from you. So I know I'm giving you a little bit of a non-answer again, because like it's really not my world yet. I haven't fully sort of grasped things yet.
Mm-hmm.
But that's sort of my thinking on it.
Mm-hmm. Well, the irony is that because I'm a little tech literate, and by the way, to my video editor with the blue screen, it was working fine so far, and then all of a sudden, so sorry to my video editor, we got this far. Anyways, I'm a little like NFT crypto literate. I'm not great at it. I'm not even the most literate in my own company. But the irony is that with NFTs, oftentimes the way they've described the value is the same way they describe the value of, say, baseball cards, is because so each individual is going to have different point of view as to whether or not this is valuable. That allows it to have immense value to one person, and another person just regard it as a piece of cardboard. As somebody who's Magic the Gathering player, when I pulled out Archangel Avacyn on Christmas Day, I was ecstatic, but everybody else in the room was just, you just pulled out a card. I'm like, yeah, but it's a mythic rare. Anyways. So with NFTs, it is, there's just there's so many things that are going to go wrong with it. It's just, growing pains, but the core value of it is any individual could have a way of providing value that other people will subjectively weigh on their own terms. So artists, musicians, writers, which I guess we can just describe as artists, influencers, scientists, Elon Musk, you name it. If somebody has a perceived value, then that can make an NFT, that can make or break an NFT. So it is a fascinating space. But what I will just say from my for somebody like for people like myself who are interested and want to get their feet wet but don't want to bet the house on it. What I would recommend is just look for ways to do it passively. Like edit audio. I used to edit audio before I joined the company here, and I still have one client who is a sports a journalist named Gary Wolfel. He does the Green Bay Packers. So nice. I'm accidentally a Packers fan now, and when I'm looking at the audio track, if I notice a audio signature that actually looks kind of pleasing, like one of them actually took the shape of a sword, I put that on OpenSea and just sell that as an NFT. I don't know. It's just going to work. I just took a random audio track, but it's just a matter of like, finding ways to revisit stuff that I'm doing and see if maybe there's additional value there that I would have overlooked prior to. So that to me is like the win for NFTs. But oh man, I just gotta just pour a glass of scotch and just watch some YouTube videos of people complaining about how bad NFTs are for the environment. You just have a good time. Yeah. We hit an hour. And you said you're going to give it a little bit extra. So I'm just going to take that little bit extra.
Yeah. I have a few more minutes.
So actually, just take one quick second to scan. Which one am I dying to ask? Oh, I know exactly what I'm dying to ask. Okay. We're just gonna wind down with this one because I just want to ask this one really for the fun of it. But we know from my team do the LinkedIn stuff. They saw that you were in a fraternity, and I've always wanted to ask what life is actually like in a fraternity because my frame of reference is the Old School and Animal House, which I had to confess to you prior to recording. So I would just love to hear like what was the day-to-day experience, events. Obviously, we don't want you to be implicated for anything, but what I just really just love to hear about it.
Yeah, thankfully my time there, like you have your moments where things are fun, maybe not quite as like what you see in the movies. Things that are, it's a little bit of an exaggerated, at least in my experience, a little bit of an exaggerated case, but
I would think once Will Ferrell has evolved, things will heighten reality.
Fraternity life was great for me in college. It was. I was in A Pi Alpha Epsilon Pi, a Jewish fraternity. So for me, like being a Jewish kid, kind of gave me a sense of community. Kind of being with a lot of people who were like me and in a new place, college, like what is this? So like kind of helped ease that transition, and built some of my best friendships, through that process. But for me, like I also got like a lot of experience out of it, like that ultimately has helped me in everything that I do today. I was the president of our chapter, and just so kind of through that, like even in my time in college, like I kind of liken it to what I did for a few years when I had the sunglasses business. I was working at Steiner, I was working on the side, like I was doing all these different things. In college, I was a student. I was interning for the baseball team, and I was president of the fraternity, which was like a full-time job in itself. Learning how to manage people, learning how to manage budgets, learning how to plan events, learning how to do all these things and build relationships with people at our national organization. And for me, it was a great experience. It wasn't always Animal House every day. Again, we had our moments, but I had a lot of fun.
I think what sticks out to me the most is just the importance of building that community. And I went to college, didn't join a frat. Obviously, that's why I'm asking that question. But throughout education, some of the closest friends that I've had have all come from people that we bonded together through school. I was just curious to hear about that one. And with that, we're gonna wrap this bad boy up. So Ben, it's been a great hour talking to you, hearing your story, and learning from you, learning what makes you tick. So I really appreciate having your time here. The final question is, I'm still developing the closed question meta. It's going to take some time, but it's in two parts. A, if you have any like bits of wisdom or like a Chinese proverb you heard recently that really sticks, feel free to share it. And then let the audience know how they can make contact. And I want to asterisk this especially because you did mention that you're willing to help out people who are maybe starting out and they just need a little bit of an opportunity. So how would somebody in that situation reach out to you?
Sure.
He says as he gets his pen out.
Yeah. To answer your first question, I've thought about this a lot lately, like because I do get the question very often of how are you, how are you like so doing so much with Shopify and with this program and this software? Like how did you start? Like we talked about before, there was not necessarily like me knowing the answer to that question 5, 6, 7 years ago. You don't always have those answers. But if you do something that you enjoy, that you do consistently, and over time it starts to build where it's from a business perspective, if it's making you money and it's making you more money, or just from a overall quality of life, like you're enjoying it and you're getting more pleasure at, like you're just whatever that thing is that makes you happy. If you just kind of keep doing it, you don't have to have the answers right away. So that's what I would say to that. You don't have to have the answers. And for people to get in touch with me, so I'm pretty active on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. It's all at Ben Zettler, BenZettler, for the people listening out there. And you can always reach me directly. My contact info is on my website, benzettler.com. And if somebody that is sort of in a space where they're just kind of trying to start out with something, they're looking to build a business, reach out and we can certainly schedule some time to chat. And if there's an opportunity for us to work together, then, we can always do that. Like I said before, like I'll work with clients, across a number of different areas, both, more consultative and tactical work. So, we'll take on, management retainers for larger businesses for different services, as well as helping out those folks that are just starting out too.
Fantastic. Well, once again, thank you for everything you shared with us today. Means a lot to me. I know I say that pretty much every episode. Oh God, there's times where I didn't say it. Oh, that's not good. Anyways, so it's been a great hour, and yeah, I'm happy to have you back. Usually we give it a couple of quarters, just okay. To let some time space out, but we'd be more than happy to have you back and carry on the conversation. So with that, to my audience, as always, it is an honor and privilege to collect this information, use it for my own benefit, but your own benefit as well. It's not like I don't think about you, the audience, but nonetheless, to collect this information, share with the world, it means a lot to me. And to everybody, all I have left to say is take care, and we will check in soon.
Plus BigCommerce, WooCommerce. So if you're on one of these e-com platforms,
Hey, this is Joseph from Ecommerce. Just wanted to thank you for being here and for giving this content your time and attention. I hope you learned something. I can say with certainty, I have learned something with every episode that I have done, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. There's a couple things you can do to help us out. If you want to check out the audio content, we are available on all major podcast platform distributors. And while you're there, give us a 5-star review. It helps a lot. And while you're here on YouTube, there's a lot of things you can do to help out as well. It's not going to take very long. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button for this episode, and hit the notification bell so when we have new content for you, it's going to be at your doorstep ASAP. Lastly, this podcast is created by Debutify, the best Shopify template available. It is 100% free for you to start, and it can change your life. It can make you so much more free than you are right now. So if this episode wasn't enough to convince you, I think a few more might do the trick. So have at it.